Hey everyone, tonight we're stepping into a world that's not just harsh but also extremely brutal for anyone. What it would feel like to wake up one morning in a medieval home, surrounded by dangers and discomforts that the people of the time barely noticed. You think your modern life has its challenges? Wait until you experience the gritty, smelly, perilous reality of a 13th century English dwelling. If you're enjoying this journey through time, I'd love it if you'd give a like or subscribe. I'm also curious about where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment with your location and the local time. It's incredible to think about people all over the world drifting off to stories like this. So find that cozy spot, take a slow, deep breath, and let your body melt into whatever you're resting on. Now let your imagination run wild, and let's get started. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1275, in a creaky wooden shack on the outskirts of a muddy English market town called York. The good news? You're still breathing, and the rats haven't chewed through your toes, yet. The bad news? You're a commoner, and life for ordinary folk in the 13th century is anything but comfortable. No hot showers, no flushing toilets, and certainly no cozy breakfasts waiting in the next room. The fire's gone out, the roof leaked all night, and you've woken up cold, damp, and aching in every joint. But before we get to your long, grim day of hauling water, patching thatch, or queuing at the market with a few sad coins, let's take a look around. Your bed? It's not a bed. It's a sad, sagging sack of straw, stuffed into a roughly nailed wooden frame that groans like a dying ox every time you shift. The roof above you leaks. Last night's drizzle seeped straight through the thatch, soaking into your bedding, and now the straw beneath you squelches unpleasantly in spots. The scent in the room is a powerful cocktail of damp timber, mildew, old smoke, and something distinctly human. The sharp, sour odour of unwashed skin, fermented sweat, and lingering breath from a dozen snores. Your eyes snap open, and for a moment you're utterly disoriented, caught in a haze where reality feels like a dream gone wrong. The darkness around you isn't the soft, comforting dimness of your modern bedroom, where the gentle glow of an alarm clock or the faint seep of streetlights through curtains offers reassurance. No, this is a deep, suffocating darkness, so thick it seems to press against your skin, heavy with the weight of a world untouched by electricity or modern comforts. The air is cold, bitingly, bone-chillingly so, and it carries a pungent, almost overwhelming mix of smells that assault your senses. Damp earth, like the scent of a freshly turned grave, rotting straw, sour and musty, unwashed bodies, their sweat and grime accumulated over weeks, and something faintly smoky, like the ghost of a fire long extinguished, lingering in the air like a memory of warmth you can't quite grasp. You shift, expecting the familiar give of a modern mattress, perhaps the soft cradle of memory foam or the gentle creak of a box spring. Instead, a sharp prickle jabs at your back, startling you into full awareness. This isn't a mattress at all. It's a coarse sack, crudely stitched, stuffed with straw, that rustles and crackles with every movement. The sack lies directly on a wooden frame, its slats uneven and splintered, creaking ominously under your weight. The straw inside is damp in places, releasing a musty odour that makes your nose wrinkle and your throat tighten. Something small and sharp, perhaps a twig, a piece of chaff, or, worse, a bone from some long-forgotten harvest, pokes through the thin fabric, jabbing your skin like a cruel reminder of where you are. You reach down to brush it away, and your fingers graze something else. A tiny, quick movement, like an insect skittering across your hand. Biting back a yelp, you realize it's likely a flea or perhaps a louse thriving in the filthy bedding. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where your bed is not a place of rest, but a haven for vermin, a breeding ground for pests that carry diseases you'd rather not think about. You sit up slowly, your breath visible in the frigid air, forming fleeting clouds that dissipate into the gloom. Your skin prickles with goosebumps, the cold seeping into your bones, as if the very air is determined to sap your warmth. You're wrapped in a rough woolen blanket, scratchy and heavy, its fibres coarse against your skin, smelling faintly of lanolin, sweat, and something sour, like milk gone bad. Beneath it, you're wearing a long linen shift, stiff with grime and far too thin to offer any real protection against the chill. The fabric clings to your body, its texture rough and unyielding, patched in places where wear has thinned it to near transparency. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, wincing as your bare feet touch the floor. It's not the smooth hardwood or plush carpet of your modern home, but packed earth, cold and slightly damp, scattered with more straw that sticks to your soles and crunches underfoot. The sensation is jarring, like stepping into a world that doesn't care for your comfort. You hear sounds now, grunts, snores, the rustle of bodies stirring in the darkness. You're not alone, and the realization sends a shiver down your spine that has little to do with the cold. In the dim light, barely perceptible through the narrow slits in the wall that pass for windows, you make out the shapes of others sleeping nearby. Adults sprawled on similar straw pallets, children curled into tight balls for warmth, and perhaps even a dog, its mangy form huddled in a corner, its breathing a soft, rhythmic wheeze. This is no private bedroom, no sanctuary of solitude. It's a communal living space, a single room where the entire household, humans and animals alike, huddles together for survival, sharing warmth, air, and the ever-present threat of disease. Privacy, as you know it, is a foreign concept here, a luxury unimaginable to these people who live, eat, and sleep in each other's constant presence. A rooster's piercing crow slices through the morning stillness, its sound so sharp it feels like a physical blow, reverberating through the thin walls. It's joined by the low, plaintive bleating of a goat tethered just outside, its cries mingling with the clucking of chickens and the occasional grunt of a pig rooting in the yard. The Middle Ages have begun, and you're already longing for the familiar comforts of your modern home, the hum of a heater, the soft glow of a bedside lamp, the clean scent of fresh linens. You stand, careful not to disturb the others still sleeping, their forms barely discernible in the gloom. The straw mattress shifts beneath you, releasing another cloud of musty dust that catches in your throat, making you cough, a dry hacking sound that echoes in the small space. The sound turns to a house sound, then loads into your ear, a dry hacking sound that echoes in the small space. The air is thick, heavy with the mingled smells of unwashed bodies, animal dung from the livestock kept close, and the faint, acrid tang of wood smoke from last night's fire, which has long since died to embers. You make your way toward one of the wall slits, hoping to let in more light and perhaps a breath of fresher air. The wooden shutter is warped, its surface rough with splinters, and it sticks stubbornly as you push against it. With a grunt of effort, you force it open, and a gust of cold air rushes in, carrying the scent of damp earth, wet straw, and the unmistakable odour of livestock waste. Your eyes sting from the sudden chill, and you blink rapidly, trying to adjust to the grey dawn light that filters through the narrow opening. Outside, you glimpse a muddy yard, its surface churned into a treacherous quagmire by days of relentless rain, the kind that soaks the earth until it's a sodden, slippery mess underfoot. The ground is a patchwork of ruts and puddles, each step a gamble that threatens to suck your bare feet into the mire or send you sprawling into the filth. The chickens, their feathers bedraggled and caked with mud, peck listlessly at the ground, their beady eyes darting as they scratch for scraps of grain or the occasional worm unearthed by the rain. Their clucking is a low, irritable chatter, punctuated by the occasional squawk as one bird jostles another in the cramped space. A pig, its bristly hide streaked with layers of grime and excrement, roots eagerly in a pile of refuse near the fence, a revolting heap of kitchen scraps, vegetable peels, bones, and animal dung, mingled with unidentifiable waste, has been left to rot in the open air. The pig's snuffling noises, wet and guttural, add a rhythmic undertone to the morning's cacophony, blending with the distant bleating of a goat tethered to a rickety wooden post that looks like it could collapse with a strong gust. The goat stares at you with unblinking, eerie eyes, its jaw working methodically as it chews on a scrap of bark scavenged from a pile of firewood, its teeth grinding with a faint, unsettling crunch. The air out here is no fresher than inside. It's thick with the stench of manure, wet straw, and the sour tang of decay, a smell so potent it clings to the back of your throat and makes your eyes water. The yard is enclosed by a low fence of woven branches, their ends frayed and splintered, barely sturdy enough to keep the animals contained. In places, the fence sags or leans precariously, patched with clumps of mud and straw where someone tried to shore it up against the relentless weather. Beyond this flimsy barrier stretches a patchwork of fields and huts, their outlines blurred by the early morning mist that hangs low over the landscape like a shroud. The fields, divided by low stone walls or hedges of thorny gorse, are a mix of muddy furrows and sparse crops, barley or rye perhaps, struggling to grow in the poor, overworked soil. The huts, much like your own, are squat, unassuming structures of wattle and daub, their thatched roofs sagging under the weight of moss and moisture. Smoke curls lazily from a few, signalling that other households are stirring, their fires rekindled to fend off the morning chill, but the mist carries a damp, creeping cold that seeps into your bones, making your thin linen shift feel like little more than a rag against the elements. This is your new reality, a medieval home, cramped, filthy, and teeming with unseen dangers that lurk in every corner, every breath, every touch. The house behind you is a fragile shell, its walls of woven sticks, plastered with a mixture of mud, straw, and animal dung, that's meant to keep out the wind but does little against the relentless damp. The thatched roof above sags in places, its straw blackened by years of rain and mould, likely leaking during storms to drip cold water onto the earthen floor below. That floor, packed hard but never truly clean, is a breeding ground for pests, fleas, lice, and mice that scurry unseen, and mould that thrives in the damp, releasing spores that irritate your lungs with every breath. You take a deep breath, steeling yourself for the day ahead, and immediately regret it as the stench of the yard fills your lungs, a noxious blend of animal waste, rotting food, and the faint metallic scent of mud churned by countless feet and hooves. The air tastes as bad as it smells, coating your tongue with a gritty residue that makes you gag. How did anyone survive this harsh, unforgiving world? The answer, you realize with a sinking heart, is that many didn't. Disease, dysentery, cholera, typhoid spread through contaminated water and food, carried by flies that buzz from the latrine pit to the kitchen table. Malnutrition weakened bodies already battered by cold and labour, making even minor illnesses deadly. Accidents were commonplace. A slip in the mud could break a bone, a spark from the hearth could ignite the dry straw of the roof, and a cut from a rusty tool could lead to tetanus or sepsis. Life here is a constant battle against a world that seems designed to kill you, and you're only just beginning to grasp the precariousness of existence in this time. You wrap your arms around yourself, the thin shift doing little to ward off the cold that bites at your exposed skin, leaving your fingers and toes numb. The fleas you felt earlier are a persistent itch now, a reminder of the vermin that thrive in this environment, carrying diseases like the plague that will soon ravage this land. The filth, the freezing air, the ever-present threat of illness, they're just the start of the challenges this medieval day will bring. You glance back at the house, its low doorway barely visible in the dim light, and notice a small pile of firewood stacked haphazardly against the wall. It's damp, covered in a thin sheen of frost, and you realize that gathering and preparing fuel is another endless task in this world. The wood must be chopped, carried, and dried, often inadequately, before it can feed the meagre fire inside, which provides the only heat and means of cooking. The thought of the labour involved, performed day after day in all weathers, makes your modern sensibilities recoil. You turn your gaze back to the yard, where a child, no older than 6, emerges from the house, barefoot and shivering in a patched tunic. He carries a wooden bucket, likely to fetch water from the nearby well, a well you suspect is dangerously close to the latrine pit, its water tainted by seepage. The child's face is smudged with dirt, his eyes dull with the exhaustion of a life that demands work from even its youngest members. You want to call out, to warn him about the dangers lurking in the water, the mud, the very air he breathes, but you know it would be futile. This is their world, and they know no other. The mist begins to lift slightly, revealing more of the village beyond. A cluster of huts, a small church with a wooden cross atop its steeple, and the faint outline of a manor house in the distance, where the local lord holds sway. But even that distant promise of wealth offers no real safety. Disease and death respect no rank in this era. You shiver again, not just from the cold, but from the weight of realization. Every step in this medieval world is a gamble, every moment a brush with unseen peril. As you stand shivering by the open shutter, the cold air biting at your exposed skin through the thin, grimy linen shift, The household begins to stir, its sounds pulling you further into this alien world. A child whimpers softly from a corner. A plaintive sound that cuts through the stillness, tinged with the discomfort of hunger or cold. Some adult mutters something in a language you only half recognize. Middle English, its cadence thick and rolling, peppered with unfamiliar words that tumble from the tongue like stones. Forsooth. Swathe. The accent is heavy, almost guttural, shaped by a life spent in this rural corner of 13th century England, where the rhythms of speech are as tied to the land as the people themselves. Someone coughs, a wet, rattling sound that echoes ominously in the cramped space, a harbinger of illness that sends a chill down your spine unrelated to the freezing air. You turn back to the room, now faintly illuminated by the pale grey dawn light filtering through the narrow slit of the open shutter. The space is smaller than you expected, perhaps 15 feet square, its confines pressing in on you like a physical weight. The ceiling looms low, its rough-hewn beams blackened by years of smoke, their surfaces glistening faintly with a sheen of dampness and soot. The walls, constructed of wattle and daub, woven sticks plastered with a crude mixture of mud, straw and animal dung, appear sturdy at a glance, but betray their fragility when you brush against them, your fingers meeting a cold, clammy surface that leaves a faint smear of dirt on your skin. The air is heavy, thick with a haze that stings your eyes and catches in your throat, a mix of smoke, dust and the ever-present mustiness of decay. In one corner a small hearth smoulders, its embers barely glowing, the remains of last night's fire reduced to a faint, ashen glow that offers no real warmth. The smoke has nowhere to go but up, curling lazily toward a small hole in the roof that serves as a makeshift chimney, though it's woefully inadequate. Much of the smoke lingers, swirling in the air, coating your throat with a bitter, acrid taste, and making your eyes water with every blink. The room feels like a trap. Its air a toxic blend of soot and damp that you can't escape. You're sharing this confined space with what appears to be an extended family, their forms slowly emerging from the gloom as your eyes adjust. 2 adults, their bodies hunched against the cold, lie on straw-stuffed pallets similar to yours, their blankets thin and tattered. 3 children of varying ages are scattered across the floor, their small forms curled tightly for warmth, their faces smudged with dirt even in sleep. An elderly woman, her frame frail and skeletal, remains wrapped in a tattered blanket near the hearth, her intermittent coughs punctuating the morning sounds, a wet, hacking noise that makes you uneasy, given what you know about medieval medicine's inability to treat even basic ailments. A couple of chickens cluck softly in a corner, their feathers ruffled as they peck at the straw-strewn floor, oblivious to the human suffering around them. A scruffy dog, its fur matted with dirt and fleas, lifts its head from a pile of rags to stare at you with wary yellow eyes, before settling back down with a low, rumbling sigh. The lack of privacy is jarring, almost suffocating. There are no separate rooms, no doors to close, no barriers to carve out a moment of solitude. This single, smoky space is where the entire household eats, sleeps, works, and lives, their lives intertwined in a way that feels both intimate and oppressive to your modern sensibilities. You step carefully over a sleeping child, her small body curled into a ball, her breath a faint puff of vapour in the cold air. The earthen floor beneath your bare feet is icy, its surface uneven and dotted with patches of damp straw that cling to your soles, gritty and uncomfortable. You make your way to the hearth, hoping to coax some warmth from the dying embers, your fingers already numb and tingling from the cold. Winters in medieval England are brutal, relentless in their cruelty, and this house offers little protection against the elements. The thin walls and sagging roof let in drafts that whistle through the cracks, and the hearth is your only source of heat. Its meagre flames a lifeline in a world where cold can kill as surely as disease. You kneel beside the hearth, the rough stones digging into your knees, and search for kindling. A small pile of twigs and branches, some still damp from being stored outside, lies nearby, and you gather a handful, your hands trembling from the cold and your own uncertainty. You've seen fires built in historical dramas, but the reality is far messier. Your fingers fumble, the sticks tumbling out of place as you try to arrange them over the embers, their bark rough and splintered against your skin. After several clumsy attempts, a small flame catches, its tentative glow a small victory. But the triumph is short-lived, as a plume of smoke billows upward, thicker and more choking than before, filling the room with a haze that makes you cough again, your throat raw and your eyes streaming. You realize now why the beams and walls are so blackened, why every surface bears the mark of years of smoke. Respiratory ailments, pneumonia, bronchitis, or worse, must be rampant here, though the people of this time would likely attribute them to bad air or divine displeasure, unaware of the link between smoke inhalation and illness. The noise of your coughing rouses one of the adults, a woman in her 30s, her face etched with lines of weariness that speak of a life spent toiling in this unforgiving world. She rises from her pallet, brushing straw from her coarse linen dress, its fabric patched and faded, stained with the grime of daily life. Her hair is tucked beneath a linen cap, strands escaping in greasy wisps, and her hands are calloused, the knuckles red and chapped from cold and labour. She gives you a curious look, her eyes sharp despite the exhaustion in them, as if trying to place you in this strange household. "Good morrow," she says, her voice rough but not unkind, carrying the weight of someone accustomed to giving orders in a world where survival demands cooperation. "The fire needs more wood if we're to break our fast." You nod, unsure of your role in this family, sister, cousin, or stranger thrust into their midst, but eager to avoid suspicion in a time when outsiders could be accused of witchcraft or worse. She points to a stack of logs near the low doorway, their bark damp and moss-covered, likely chopped from the nearby woods and left to moulder in the rain. You fetch a few, the rough texture scraping your hands, leaving splinters that sting as you carry them back to the hearth. The fire grows stronger as you add the logs, its warmth a faint relief against the pervasive cold, but the smoke thickens, curling through the room like a living thing. The hole in the roof is no match for it, and the haze settles over everything, coating your skin, your clothes, and the already filthy pallets in a fine layer of soot. You cough again, your chest tight, and wonder how anyone endures this constant assault on their lungs. As the room warms slightly, the faint heat from the hearth offering a fragile reprieve from the bone-chilling cold, the household begins to stir, its inhabitants rousing themselves from the restless slumber of a medieval night. The children, their small bodies unfolding from straw-stuffed pallets, stretch and yawn, their movements slow and heavy with the exhaustion of lives that know little rest. Their faces are smudged with dirt, a permanent mask of grime that clings to their skin like a second layer, their cheeks pale and hollow from a diet that offers little beyond survival. The eldest, a boy of perhaps 10, rubs his eyes with grubby fists, muttering something about tending the sheep, his voice low and already burdened with the weight of responsibility far beyond his years. His tunic, patched and frayed at the hems, hangs loosely on his thin frame, the coarse wool stained with mud and grease from days spent in the fields. He moves with a purpose that belies his age, his eyes darting toward the door as if the flock outside is already calling him to duty. The younger children, a girl of about 8 and a smaller boy no more than 5, move sluggishly, their bodies reluctant to leave the meagre warmth of their pallet. Their clothes, little more than patched tunics and hose, are threadbare, the fabric worn thin from constant use and rarely washed, hanging loosely on frames that speak of hunger and hard labour. Their skin is pale, almost translucent, a testament to a diet of coarse bread and watery pottage, lacking the nutrients needed for growth or vitality. The girl's hair, tangled and matted, escapes from beneath a tattered linen cap, while the boy's face is streaked with dirt, his eyes dull with the resignation of a life that demands work from even its youngest. The elderly woman remains on her pallet near the hearth, her frail form barely moving beneath a tattered blanket that offers little protection against the cold. Her coughs grow more frequent now, each one a wet, laboured sound that echoes through the small room, a chilling reminder of the fragility of life in this era. You wince at the noise, your modern knowledge of medicine making you fear what that cough might mean. Tuberculosis, pneumonia, or some other ailment that festers in the damp, smoky air of this poorly ventilated home. There's no cure here, only prayers whispered to a distant god, or useless remedies, bloodletting by a barber surgeon's filthy blade, or poultices of herbs that do more to soothe the mind than heal the body. The thought of medieval medicine, with its reliance on superstition and crude practices, sends a shiver through you. as does the realization that this woman's illness could easily spread in the cramped communal space you all share. The air, thick with smoke and the musty scent of damp straw, feels like a breeding ground for disease. And you can't help but wonder how many in this household have already succumbed to such ailments, their names forgotten in a world where death is a constant companion. The woman who spoke to you earlier, perhaps your sister or cousin in this strange, disorienting reality, moves with practiced efficiency toward a wooden chest near the wall. Her coarse linen dress, stained and patched like the children's, rustles softly as she kneels, her calloused hands brushing against the chest's scarred surface, its wood worn smooth by years of use and pitted with cracks from the damp. The lid creaks loudly as she lifts it, the sound sharp in the quiet room, revealing a pitiful collection of possessions that speak to the poverty of this household. Inside you glimpse a clay pot, its surface chipped and stained from countless meals, a bundle of rags, frayed and filthy, likely used for everything from cleaning to swaddling infants, a small sack of dried herbs, their faint earthy scent barely discernible over the smoke, and a loaf of dark, heavy bread, its crust rough and speckled with bits of chaff that catch the dim light. The bread is dense, likely made from rye or barley, as wheat is a luxury far beyond the means of this family. Its surface is hard, almost unyielding, and you can already imagine its gritty texture, the way it will stick in your teeth. Its sour, slightly mouldy taste, a reminder of the constant threat of spoilage in a world without refrigeration. There's no butter, no jam, no fruit to accompany it, just this loaf, the cornerstone of a breakfast that's as meagre as it is monotonous. A far cry from the abundance of your modern kitchen, with its stocked fridge and pantry overflowing with choices. You're already dreading what the day will bring, the weight of it settling over you like the smoke that fills the room. The lack of modern comforts, clean water at the turn of a tap, electricity to light the darkness, sanitation to keep disease at bay, feels like a loss you can't fully process. The fleas you felt earlier are a persistent itch now, a constant reminder of the vermin that thrive in every corner of this home, crawling through the straw, nesting in the folds of your clothes and carrying diseases like the plague that will soon devastate this land. The smoke from the hearth stings your eyes, leaving them red and watering, while the cold numbs your fingers, making every movement clumsy and painful. The coughs of the elderly woman echo in your mind, each one a warning of the fragility of life in this era, where a simple illness can become a death sentence. You stand by the hearth, clutching the rough woolen blanket around your shoulders, its coarse fibres scratching your skin, its smell of lanolin and sweat a constant assault on your senses. The fire offers a small circle of warmth, but it's not enough to banish the chill that permeates the room, seeping through the thin walls and the gaps around the shutters. The house feels like a trap, its wattle and daub walls and sagging thatched roof offering little protection against the elements or the dangers within. Mould growing unseen in the damp corners, pests scurrying across the earthen floor, and the ever-present threat of fire from the poorly tended hearth. As the children begin to move, their small tasks assigned by the woman, you catch glimpses of the day's routine unfolding. The eldest boy pulls on a pair of worn boots, their soles caked with mud, and heads for the door, his shoulders squared as if bracing for the cold outside. The girl is tasked with fetching water, her small hands gripping a wooden bucket that looks too heavy for her slight frame. The younger boy, barely awake, is set to gathering more kindling, his movements slow and reluctant. Every member of the household, no matter how young, has a role to play, their labour essential to the family's survival. The woman begins to slice the bread with a dull knife, her movements precise despite the weariness in her eyes, and you realise that this simple act, preparing a meal, is a daily battle against scarcity and spoilage. The loaf is the heart of the household's sustenance, but it's not enough to fill bellies or provide the strength needed for the day's work. You brace yourself for the challenges ahead, the endless tasks that will demand your energy in a world where rest is a luxury and survival is a daily triumph. The smoke, the cold, the fleas, the looming spectre of disease. They're just the beginning. And you can't shake the feeling that this medieval day, barely started, will test you in ways you can't yet imagine. Your first pressing need is to find a bathroom, a primal urge that feels all the more urgent in the unfamiliar, frigid confines of this medieval home, where the cold seeps into your bones and the air is thick with the stench of decay. You scan the small, smoky room, your eyes darting across the straw-strewn floor and blackened beams, hoping for a sign of something resembling modern sanitation. But the truth hits you like a blow. There's no such thing here, no indoor plumbing, no gleaming porcelain toilet, not even a proper outhouse to offer a shred of dignity. Instead, your gaze settles on a wooden bucket tucked in a shadowy corner, its weathered surface dark with stains, its contents emitting a sharp, ammonia-like stench that cuts through the haze of smoke and damp earth. The smell is overwhelming, a vile mix of human waste, rotting straw, and neglect that makes your eyes water and your stomach lurch with nausea. The bucket, crudely carved and splintered at the edges, sits unceremoniously on the earthen floor, a grim testament to the lack of sanitation in this 13th century world. You hesitate, your modern sensibilities recoiling at the thought of using this foul communal receptacle, but the urgency of your need leaves you little choice. You consider staying inside, but the lack of privacy, every corner of this cramped space shared by the entire household, makes the idea unbearable. Swallowing your discomfort, you wrap the coarse woolen blanket tighter around your shoulders and step outside, your bare feet sinking into the muddy yard you glimpsed earlier. The cold, slick earth squelches between your toes, each step a struggle against the quagmire churned by days of relentless rain. The yard is a mess of ruts and puddles, the ground treacherous underfoot, threatening to pull you down into the filth. In one corner of the yard, partially obscured by a low fence of woven branches, its sticks frayed and sagging, offering only the barest nod to modesty, you find the designated latrine. It's little more than a shallow pit dug into the ground, its edges crumbling and slick with mud, surrounded by a cloud of flies that buzz and dart in a frenzied, nauseating dance. The reek of human waste is overpowering, a noxious blend of excrement, urine and decay that hits you like a physical force, making you gag and cover your nose with the edge of your blanket, though it does little to block the stench. The pit is a festering wound in the earth, its surface slick with moisture and buzzing with insects that carry who knows what diseases. You hesitate, your heart pounding with a mix of embarrassment and dread, your modern instincts screaming that this is wrong, unsafe, unthinkable. But necessity wins out, as it always does in this unforgiving world, and you crouch awkwardly, trying to maintain some semblance of dignity in a place where such a concept barely exists. The experience is as unpleasant as you feared, worse even, with no toilet paper to ease the indignity. You glance around, desperate for something to use, and spot a nearby bush, its leaves damp and slightly wilted from the morning mist. You grab a handful, praying they aren't poisonous or covered in thorns, and make do, the rough, wet texture scraping your skin, leaving you feeling dirtier than before. As you stand, you notice the pit's proximity to a small stream that runs just beyond the yard, its waters sluggish and brown. The realization hits you like a stone. This latrine likely drains into that stream, contaminating the water used for drinking, cooking, and washing. Diseases like dysentery, cholera, and typhoid must spread like wildfire here, carried by flies and tainted water, though the people of this time, ignorant of germs or sanitation, blame miasmas or divine punishment for their ailments, never suspecting the true culprits lurking in their daily routines. Back inside, you seek a way to wash up, hoping to rid yourself of the lingering stench and the creeping sense of filth that clings to your skin. A wooden basin sits near the hearth, its surface worn and splintered from years of use, filled with cold water drawn from a bucket that's been sitting overnight, its contents clouded with flecks of ash, dirt and who knows what else. The water is icy, its surface shimmering faintly in the dim light, and you hesitate to touch it, knowing it's far from clean, likely drawn from that same contaminated stream. There's no soap, as you know it, no fragrant bars or liquid dispensers with floral scents. Instead, the woman who spoke to you earlier, perhaps your sister or cousin in this strange, disorienting reality, hands you a rough lump of something greyish and gritty, its surface uneven and slightly greasy to the touch. This is homemade soap, likely crafted from animal fat and wood ash, its strong alkaline bite stinging your skin as you rub it between your hands, the sensation more akin to sanding than cleansing. You splash the frigid water on your face, wincing as it shocks your skin, the cold so intense it feels like needles pricking your cheeks and forehead. Scrubbing with the soap is no better. It leaves your skin raw, red and tingling, stripped of natural oils, its gritty texture embedding tiny particles in your pores. The smell of the soap, a mix of rancid fat and acrid ash, lingers on your hands, adding to the sensory assault of this medieval morning. Toothbrushing presents another challenge, one that makes your modern dental routine, electric toothbrushes, minty toothpaste, dental floss, seem like an unimaginable luxury. There's no toothpaste here, no neatly packaged tubes or whitening gels. Instead, you're handed a small stick, its end frayed and splintered from repeated use, and directed to a pile of ash from the hearth, its surface still warm from the smouldering embers. You dip the stick into the ash, the fine grey powder clinging to the frayed fibres, and rub it against your teeth, grimacing at the gritty texture and acrid burnt taste that fills your mouth. The ash is abrasive, scraping at your enamel and leaving a chalky residue on your gums that makes you gag. You spit into the corner, hoping no one notices, but the act feels futile in a room where dirt and decay are ever present. Some households might use crushed herbs, mint or sage, or even roots for a semblance of freshness, but this family, scraping by on the barest means, relies on this cheapest, most rudimentary option. The woman mentions in passing that bathing is a rare event, reserved for warm months when the labour of heating water in a wooden tub is less daunting. Even then, it's a communal affair, with the entire household sharing the same tepid, murky water, one after another, until it's a soup of dirt, sweat, and skin flakes. The idea of daily showers, of hot water cascading over clean skin in a private bathroom, is as alien here as electricity, antibiotics, or the concept of personal space. The lack of hygiene is overwhelming, a constant, suffocating assault on your senses that you can't escape, no matter how much you wish to. Everyone in the household carries the same heavy odour, a pungent, inescapable blend of sweat, smoke, and earth, baked into their skin and clothes by days, weeks, even months without proper washing. Their garments, coarse linen tunics, woolen cloaks, and patched hose, are rarely cleaned, mended until they're more patches than original fabric, their fibres stiff with accumulated grime and grease. Fleas and lice are a constant, inescapable presence, visible as tiny black specks crawling across clothing, bedding, and the straw-strewn floor. Their movements a maddening tickle against your skin. You itch just thinking about it, and a quick scratch at your arm confirms the worst. You've already picked up several unwelcome guests, their bites leaving red, inflamed welts that burn and prickle with every movement. The communal living arrangement makes hygiene even harder. There's no privacy to wash or change, no corner of this single-room home that isn't shared by the entire family, human and animal alike. The wooden basin, its water now clouded with use from multiple hands, is a communal resource, with everyone dipping into the same murky liquid to wash faces, hands, dishes, or even wounds, spreading dirt and disease with every touch. You notice the children dipping their grubby hands into the basin without hesitation, their fingers leaving smears of dirt that swirl into the water, and you shudder at the thought of using it again. The realization hits you like a wave. This is why disease spreads so easily in this era. Without an understanding of germs, without any concept of sanitation, there's no way to keep clean in a world where dirt and decay are constant, inescapable companions. The fleas crawling on your skin, the filthy water in the basin, the latrine pit seeping into the stream, they're all vectors for disease, from skin infections to deadly plagues like the one that will soon ravage this land. The people here, unaware of the microscopic threats lurking in their environment, attribute illness to bad air, witchcraft, or God's judgment, their lives governed by superstition rather than science. You stand by the hearth, the faint warmth doing little to ease the chill in your bones, or the growing sense of unease in your chest. The fleas, the filthy water, the shared spaces, the constant stench, they're not just inconveniences, they're silent killers, lurking in every breath, every touch, every moment of this precarious existence. You clutch the rough woolen blanket tighter, its coarse fibres scratching your skin, and brace yourself for the day ahead, knowing that the challenges of this medieval world are only beginning to reveal themselves. Dressing for the day is an ordeal that makes your modern routine of slipping into clean, comfortable clothes feel like a distant dream, a luxury as unattainable as warmth in this frigid medieval home. Your wardrobe, if it can even be called that, consists of a single, meagre set of garments, each piece a testament to the scarcity and hardship of 13th century life. There's a long linen shift, its fabric coarse and yellowed with age, already stiff with accumulated grime that clings to it like a second skin. This shift, which doubles as sleepwear, is your only undergarment. There's no underwear as you'd recognize it. No soft cotton briefs or elastic waistbands, just this single layer of rough linen that chafes against your skin with every movement. Over it, you pull a coarse woolen tunic, thick and heavy, dyed a dull, muddy brown that hides the dirt and stains of daily life but does little to keep out the biting cold. The tunic is scratchy, its fibres prickling your skin like tiny needles, and it smells faintly of mildew, a sour, musty odour that speaks of damp storage and rare washing. You struggle with the unfamiliar ties and laces, your numb fingers fumbling with the coarse cords that secure the garment, their knots slippery with grease and wear. Finally, you pull on a pair of heavy stockings, more like burlap sacks than the soft socks you know, their texture rough and abrasive, leaving your legs itching and red. For extra warmth, you wrap a woolen cloak around your shoulders, its weight oppressive, its fibres matted with dirt and smelling of lanolin, sweat, and the faint tang of smoke. These clothes are not just uncomfortable, they're restrictive, heavy, and alien, a constant reminder of a world where cleanliness and comfort are unimaginable luxuries. The act of dressing is a battle in itself, made worse by the freezing air that permeates the house, even with the fire now burning steadily in the hearth. The wattle and daub walls, woven sticks plastered with a mixture of mud, straw and dung, offer little insulation, their surfaces damp and cold to the touch, glistening with condensation in the dim light. Cold drafts whistle through the gaps around the wooden shutters, sharp and relentless, cutting through your thin layers of clothing as if they were nothing. The hearth provides a small, fleeting circle of warmth, its flames crackling weakly, but step a few feet away and you're plunged back into the bone-chilling cold, your breath visible in clouds that linger in the air. You pull your cloak tighter, its rough edges digging into your neck, but it does little to ward off the chill that seeps into your bones, making your fingers and toes ache with a dull, persistent pain. In summer, you imagine, this house would be a different kind of hell, stifling and oppressive, the thick walls trapping heat like an oven, the lack of ventilation turning the air heavy with the stench of sweat, cooking odours, and the ever-present smoke from the hearth. The smoke lingers now, even with the fire burning, curling through the room like a malevolent spirit, coating your throat with a bitter, acrid taste and making your eyes water with every blink. The hole in the roof, meant to serve as a chimney, is woefully inadequate, and the air is thick with a choking haze that settles on every surface, from the blackened beams to the straw-strewn floor. You notice the children, now gathered near the hearth, coughing as they huddle close to the flames, their small bodies wrapped in equally threadbare clothing, patched tunics and cloaks that hang loosely on their thin frames, offering little protection against the cold. Their coughs are dry and persistent, a troubling sound that echoes the wet, rattling cough of the elderly woman still lying on her pallet. Respiratory illnesses are a constant, insidious threat in this environment, exacerbated by the smoke that fills the air, the damp that clings to the walls, and the mould that thrives unseen in the corners, its musty scent mingling with the other odours of the house. You can almost feel the spores in your lungs, the invisible menace that contributes to the agues and fevers that plague this household, though the people here attribute such ailments to bad air or divine displeasure, unaware of the true dangers lurking in their home. The clothing, filthy and rarely washed, is another vector for disease. Fleas and lice crawl freely in the folds of the wool and linen, their bites leaving red, inflamed welts on your skin that itch incessantly. Laundry is a monumental task in this era, a grueling process that requires hours of fetching water, heating it over the fire, scrubbing with caustic soap made from ash and fat, and drying the heavy, sodden garments over smoky fires that only add to their stench. Most people, you realize, simply wear their clothes until they're falling apart, the fabric disintegrating into rags before being replaced, a cycle that ensures the constant presence of dirt and vermin. The strangeness of this wardrobe is almost as terrifying as its utter inadequacy, a visceral reminder that you're trapped in a world where comfort is a foreign concept and survival is a daily gamble against the elements and disease. The heavy, shapeless garments draped over your body feel alien. Their textures and smells are salting your senses with every movement. Their lack of cleanliness a constant, oppressive reminder of the filth that defines this 13th century existence. There's no variety, no choice, no daily change of fresh clothes, only this single, wretched set, worn day and night through back-breaking labour in the muddy fields and restless sleep on a flea-infested pallet. The long linen shift, your only undergarment, is stiff with accumulated grime. Its once white fabric now a dingy grey, patched in places where wear has torn it thin. It rubs against your skin with every step, the coarse fibres chafing your thighs and arms, embedding dirt and sweat deeper into your flesh, until the garment feels like an extension of your body, inseparable and suffocating. Over it, the woolen tunic is a heavy, scratchy burden, dyed a dull brown to mask the inevitable stains of mud, grease and blood, but its thickness does little to keep out the relentless cold. The wool prickles like 1,000 tiny needles, its fibres matted with damp and reeking of mildew, a sour, musty odour that clings to your nostrils and makes your stomach turn. The tunic's laces, frayed and slippery with grease, are a struggle to tie, your fingers fumbling in the dim light, numb from the freezing air. The heavy stockings, more like burlap sacks than fabric, are coarse and abrasive, leaving your legs red and itching, their seams digging into your skin as you move. The woolen cloak you wrap around your shoulders for extra warmth is no better. Its weight drags at your frame, its fibres stiff with dirt and smelling of lanolin, smoke, and the faint, rancid tang of unwashed bodies. These clothes are not just uncomfortable, they're a prison, a constant, oppressive reminder of a world where cleanliness is a myth and warmth is a fleeting illusion. The house is a freezing, smoky trap, even with the fire now burning steadily in the hearth, its flames offering only a small, inadequate circle of warmth that barely reaches beyond the stones. The wattle and daub walls, though sturdy in appearance, are fragile against the elements, their woven sticks and mud plaster cracking under the weight of rain and wind, letting in draughts that whistle through the gaps like malevolent spirits. The cold is a relentless enemy, seeping through every layer of your inadequate clothing, chilling your bones until your fingers and toes ache with a dull, persistent pain. You pull your cloak tighter, its rough edges digging into your neck. But it's futile. The cold is everywhere, an inescapable force that makes the room feel like an extension of the icy outdoors. The thatched roof above sags in places, its straw blackened by years of damp and mould, likely leaking during storms to drip cold, murky water onto the earthen floor below. That floor, packed hard but never truly clean, is a breeding ground for pests, fleas, lice and mice that scurry unseen, and mould that thrives in the damp corners, its musty scent mingling with the smoke and mildew of your clothing. You notice scorch marks near the hearth, dark, jagged scars on the wooden beams and floor, evidence of past fires that could have consumed the entire house in moments. The thought is terrifying. A single stray spark from the hearth, a gust of wind through the open door, and this fragile structure could become an inferno, leaving nothing but ash and ruin. Fire is both a lifeline and a deadly threat in this world. Its warmth essential, but its danger ever-present. A reminder of how precarious life is in a home built of straw and wood. The smoke from the hearth lingers, curling through the room like a malevolent fog, coating your throat with a bitter, acrid taste, and stinging your eyes until they water incessantly. The hole in the roof, meant to serve as a chimney, is woefully inadequate, and the haze settles over everything, your clothes, your skin, the straw pallets, leaving a fine layer of soot that clings like a second skin. You notice the children, huddled near the hearth, coughing as they try to soak up the meagre warmth, their small bodies wrapped in threadbare tunics and cloaks, as inadequate as your own. Their coughs are dry and persistent, echoing the wet, rattling cough of the elderly woman on her pallet, a sound that sends a shiver of dread through you. Respiratory illnesses are a constant, insidious threat in this environment, fueled by the smoke that fills the air, the damp that clings to the walls, and the mould that festers unseen, its spores a silent poison in every breath. The children's faces are pale and pinched, their eyes dull from malnutrition and exhaustion, and you can't help but wonder how many winters they'll survive in this cruel world, where warmth is a fleeting illusion and illness lurks in every corner. The clothing, filthy and rarely washed, is another vector for disease. Fleas and lice crawl freely in the folds of wool and linen, their bites leaving red, inflamed welts that itch relentlessly, a maddening distraction that you can't escape. Laundry is an impossible task, a grueling ordeal that requires fetching water from a contaminated stream, heating it over the smoky fire, scrubbing with caustic soap that burns the skin, and drying the heavy sodden garments over flames that only add to their stench. Most people, you realize, simply wear their clothes until they disintegrate, the fabric falling apart into rags before being replaced, a cycle that ensures the constant presence of dirt, vermin, and disease. The strangeness of this wardrobe, its textures and smells so alien to your modern sensibilities, is almost as terrifying as its inability to protect you from the cold or filth. The heavy, shapeless garments feel like a punishment, their weight dragging at your body, their grime embedding itself into your skin until you feel as though you're becoming one with the dirt of this world. The lack of proper underwear is particularly jarring, the shift rubbing against your skin with every movement, its stiffness a constant irritation, its smell a reminder of the weeks, perhaps months, since it was last washed, if it ever was. You long for the soft, clean cotton of modern clothing, the ease of a washing machine that hums through its cycle in minutes, the warmth of a heated home that banishes the cold with the flick of a switch. Instead, you're trapped in this freezing, smoky prison, where the cold is a relentless, gnawing enemy, and the house itself seems designed to sap your strength and spirit. The wattle and daub walls, damp and crumbling, offer no insulation, and the drafts that whistle through the gaps around the shutters cut through your clothing like a blade. In summer, you imagine, this house would be a stifling nightmare, the thick walls trapping heat, the lack of ventilation turning the air into a heavy, suffocating stew of sweat, cooking odours and smoke. The contrast to your modern life is staggering. Where you have thermostats, insulated walls and clean, fresh clothes, this world offers only discomfort, danger, and the constant threat of illness or disaster. You stand by the hearth, shivering despite the fire's feeble warmth, your cloak pulled tight around your shoulders, its weight a burden you can't shed. The smoke stings your eyes, blurring your vision, while the mildew in your tunic makes your nose wrinkle, a sour, damp smell that clings to every breath. The itch of flea bites is a constant, maddening distraction, each welt a reminder of the vermin that thrive in this filthy environment. This is a world where staying warm and clean is a daily battle, one that most people lose, their bodies worn down by cold, disease and exhaustion. The strangeness of the clothing, the freezing house, the choking smoke, it's all so alien, so profoundly uncomfortable that it feels like a nightmare you can't wake from. A descent into a world where every moment is a struggle against forces you can't control. The children's coughs grow louder, their frail bodies trembling in their inadequate clothing, and you wonder how many of them will see another spring. The scorch marks near the hearth loom in your vision, a stark warning of the fire that could end it all, while the damp walls and mouldy air whisper of diseases that kill slowly, but no less surely. You brace yourself for the winter day ahead, knowing that the challenges of this medieval world, its filth, its cold, its hidden, terrifying dangers, are only beginning to reveal themselves. How anyone stays warm, or even alive in a world without central heating, proper insulation, or basic hygiene is a mystery, and the weight of that realization settles over you like the smoke that fills the room, heavy, suffocating, and inescapable. Breakfast in this medieval home is a far cry from the comforting abundance of your modern kitchen, where the crunch of cereal with cold milk, the creamy richness of avocado toast sprinkled with sea salt, or even a simple cup of coffee feels like a ritual of ease and plenty. Here, in the dim, smoky confines of this 13th century dwelling, the meal is a stark, sobering affair, a daily reminder of the scarcity and hardship that define existence in this unforgiving world. The woman who spoke to you earlier, perhaps your sister or cousin in this strange, disorienting reality, stands by the hearth, her calloused hands gripping a dull iron knife as she slices chunks from a dark, dense loaf of bread that looks more like a lump of earth than food. The bread, heavy and unyielding, is made from a coarse mix of rye and barley flour, grains ground by hand on a quern that leaves behind bits of grit and chaff. Wheat, with its soft white flour, is a luxury reserved for the tables of lords or wealthy merchants, far beyond the reach of this struggling household. She hands you a piece, its crust rough and speckled with ash from the hearth, its surface hard as stone, requiring effort just to tear it apart. You bite into it cautiously, your jaw working against the chewy, resistant texture, the gritty bits of chaff catching in your teeth, sharp and irritating, like tiny splinters. The flavour is sour, almost acrid, with a faint aftertaste of mould that creeps across your tongue. A chilling reminder that food spoilage is an ever-present threat in a world without refrigeration or proper storage. The bread, likely baked days or even a week ago, is the cornerstone of the family's survival, yet it offers no pleasure, only the grim necessity of filling an empty stomach. Beside the bread is a bowl of pottage, a thick, watery stew simmering in a blackened clay pot over the hearth, its surface bubbling sluggishly as the fire struggles to heat it through. The pottage is a mushy, unappetizing blend of oats, barley, and whatever vegetables the household has managed to scavenge or coax from their small, muddy plot outside. Today's version includes wilted cabbage, its leaves limp and greyish, their edges curling like parchment left in the rain, and a few stringy onions, their flesh soft and nearly translucent from hours of boiling. There's no seasoning beyond a pinch of coarse salt, scraped from a small, tightly wrapped sack kept in the wooden chest. A precious commodity hoarded like gold. The lack of flavour makes each spoonful feel like a chore. The pottage's texture slimy and lumpy, the cabbage dissolving into a bland, fibrous mush that clings to your palate, while the onions add a faint, bitter bite that does little to improve the experience. You swallow slowly, fighting the urge to gag as the faint, mouldy aftertaste lingers, a sign that even this meagre fare is not immune to spoilage. Meat is nowhere to be seen, a rare luxury reserved for feast days like Christmas or Easter, or the tables of the wealthy who can afford to slaughter a pig or purchase mutton from a market. For this family, meat is a distant memory, perhaps a bit of fat or gristle saved from a neighbour's rare slaughter, boiled into the pottage on a good day. The absence of protein, of anything rich or varied, leaves the meal feeling hollow, a stark contrast to the vibrant, nutrient-packed foods of your modern diet. You eat slowly, each spoonful a struggle against the monotony and the unsettling knowledge that bacteria like botulism or listeria lurk in poorly stored grains and vegetables, invisible killers that the people here can't name or prevent. The preservation methods, salting, smoking, or drying over the smoky hearth, are rudimentary, often failing to keep food safe, especially in the damp, mould-prone environment of this house. You push the bowl of pottage away, unable to finish its tasteless, gritty contents, and notice the children eyeing the leftovers with hungry, desperate eyes, their thin faces pinched with want, their cheeks pale from a diet that offers little beyond survival. Food is so scarce that waste is unthinkable, and you feel a pang of guilt for your modern pickiness in a world where hunger is a constant gnawing companion. The woman shoots you a sharp glance, her eyes narrowing as she gathers the remaining bread, wrapping it carefully in a tattered cloth to protect it from the mice and flies that skitter across the earthen floor. The children, reprimanded for reaching for your scraps, sit back, their small hands fidgeting with the edges of their threadbare tunics, their bodies shivering in the cold despite their proximity to the hearth. To wash down the meal, you're handed a mug of small beer, a weak, fermented drink that's a far cry from the crisp, refreshing brews of your time. The beer is sour and flat, its taste heavy with yeast and a faint metallic tang, likely from the clay or wooden vessel it's stored in, its surface scummy with residue. It's lukewarm, having sat near the hearth overnight, and it coats your throat with a cloying, unpleasant aftertaste. Yet, it's a necessity in this world where clean water is a rarity. The local well, you've learned, is likely contaminated with waste from the nearby latrine pit, its waters tainted by seepage that carries diseases like dysentery, cholera, and typhoid. Boiling water for drinking isn't a common practice, firewood is too scarce, and the connection between water and illness is unknown to these people, who attribute sickness to bad air or divine punishment. You sip the small beer cautiously, its sour liquid offering little comfort, but at least a safer alternative to the well's murky, dangerous offerings. Later, you learn that even the children drink small beer, their small hands clutching mugs of the same weak brew, as it's less likely to make them sick. The alcohol content is negligible, barely enough to notice, and it does little to mask the grim reality of medieval nutrition. Monotonous, often spoiled, and woefully lacking in essential nutrients. The lack of variety in nutrition is a silent killer in this era. Scurvy, with its bleeding gums and aching joints, rickets that twists young bones into painful deformities, and other deficiency diseases are rampant, though no one here understands why. They see weakness, fatigue, and illness as part of life's burden, to be endured with stoic resignation rather than addressed with fresh fruits, vegetables, or balanced meals, concepts as alien as electricity in this world. The children's pale, gaunt faces, their eyes dull with exhaustion, are a haunting testament to the toll of this diet, their bodies stunted by years of eating little more than coarse bread and watery pottage. You watch as the woman carefully portions out the remaining pottage, her movements precise and deliberate, as if every spoonful is a precious resource. The labour involved in preparing even this meagre meal is staggering. Grain must be ground by hand, vegetables harvested from a muddy, infertile plot, water hauled from a contaminated well, all before the fire can be coaxed to boil the pot. The hearth's smoke curls around you, stinging your eyes and coating your throat with a bitter, acrid taste, adding to the discomfort of the meal. The air is heavy with the smells of mouldy bread, sour beer, and the faint, rancid odour of unwashed bodies, a sensory assault that makes your stomach churn. You realise now how fragile this household's existence is, how a failed harvest, a spoiled loaf, or a tainted well could mean starvation or death. The children's thin limbs, barely covered by their patched, filthy tunics, are a stark reminder of the physical toll of this life. You sit by the hearth, the mug of small beer growing warm in your hands, and feel the weight of this medieval world pressing down on you. The monotony of the food, the constant threat of spoilage, the lack of clean water, the ever-present spectre of hunger and disease. It's a relentless, suffocating reality. And you dread the meals to come. Each one a grim battle against the odds of survival in this harsh, unforgiving era. As you clear the breakfast table, scraping the remnants of the gritty pottage and coarse bread into a wooden bowl to be saved for later, the elderly woman's cough pierces the smoky air, a wet, laboured sound that sends a shiver of dread through you. Her face is pale, almost translucent, her cheeks sunken and her eyes dull with exhaustion. Her breathing a shallow, rattling struggle that echoes in the cramped confines of the single-room home. There's no doctor to call, no pharmacy stocked with antibiotics or painkillers, no hospital waiting with sterile equipment and trained professionals. Medical care in this early 14th century world is a terrifying patchwork of folklore, superstition, and rudimentary practices that often do more harm than good, rooted in a profound ignorance of the body and its ailments. You glance at a wooden shelf near the hearth, where a small bowl holds the household's meagre remedies. A handful of dried herbs, perhaps sage or yarrow, their leaves brittle and faded. A jar of rancid animal fat, its surface greasy and flecked with dust, emitting a sour, sickly odour. And a small vial of what might be vinegar, its sharp tang cutting through the smoky air when the woman opens it to dab a cloth for cleaning. These are the tools of healing in this era, inadequate and often dangerous, used to treat everything from fevers to festering wounds. If the elderly woman's condition worsens, the household might turn to these crude concoctions. Or they'll send for a local wise woman or barber surgeon, a prospect that chills you to the core. The thought of a barber surgeon is particularly horrifying. These men, who double as hairdressers, dentists, and butchers, wield the same unsterilized tools for every task, their blades caked with blood, hair, and grease from cutting meat or trimming beards. Bloodletting is their go-to remedy, believed to balance the body's humours, a theory that dominates medieval medicine, as misguided as it is ubiquitous. They slice veins with dirty knives, letting blood pool in bowls or drip onto the straw-strewn floor, weakening already frail patients and inviting infection. Amputations, tooth extractions, and even minor surgeries are performed without anesthesia or antiseptics. The patient screams muffled only by a leather strap to bite or a swig of strong ale, if they're lucky. Wounds are often packed with dung, spider webs, or mouldy bread, believed to draw out poison. But in reality, these practices introduce bacteria that turn minor cuts into deadly infections like sepsis or gangrene. You shudder at the thought, your modern knowledge making the dangers all too clear, while the people here remain blissfully unaware, trusting in remedies passed down through generations or dictated by the church. The elderly woman's cough, persistent and wet, could be tuberculosis, pneumonia, or some other respiratory ailment, its true nature impossible to diagnose in a world without microscopes or medical science. There's no effective treatment, only prayers to saints, herbal infusions that taste of dirt and despair, or leeches applied to purge the body of ill humours, all equally useless against the invisible killers lurking in her lungs. Disease is a constant, unrelenting spectre in this era, its shadow looming over every household, every meal, every breath. The Black Death, which will soon sweep through Europe with apocalyptic force, has not yet struck in its full horror. This is the early 14th century, just before its arrival. But other illnesses are rampant, claiming lives with brutal regularity. Measles leaves children scarred and blind. Smallpox pockmarks entire villages, and dysentery spreads like wildfire through contaminated water and food, its victims racked with pain and dehydration. The lack of sanitation makes matters exponentially worse. Flies from the latrine pit, buzzing with filth, land on the bread and pottage left uncovered on the table, their legs carrying unseen pathogens from waste to food. Hands are rarely washed, the same murky water in the communal basin used for cooking, cleaning wounds and scrubbing dishes, a cycle that spreads disease with every touch. The local well, you've learned, is perilously close to the latrine pit, its waters tainted by seepage that carries deadly bacteria like cholera and typhoid. The people here, ignorant of germs or contagion, attribute sickness to miasmas, foul air rising from swamps or refuse, or to divine punishment for sins, real or imagined. Some whisper of witchcraft, casting suspicious glances at neighbours or strangers, their fear of the supernatural as potent as their fear of illness. You shudder, realising that even a small cut from a splinter or a rusty tool could lead to sepsis in this world, a slow, agonising death with no hope of treatment. The elderly woman's cough, growing louder and more frequent, is a grim warning of what might await the entire household, and you make a mental note to stay as far from her as possible. Though in this cramped communal space, with its single room shared by humans and animals alike, that's a futile hope. The air in the house is thick, almost suffocating, heavy with smoke from the hearth that curls and swirls like a malevolent fog, stinging your eyes until they water incessantly and coating your throat with a bitter, acrid residue that makes every swallow a chore. The smoke mingles with the musty scent of mould, a damp, earthy odour that seeps from the corners of the room, and the faint, rancid stench of unwashed bodies, a pervasive smell that clings to the air, the clothes, the straw-strewn floor, everything in this 13th century home. The wattle and daub walls, their woven sticks plastered with a crude mix of mud, straw and dung, are damp to the touch, their surfaces slick with condensation that glistens in the dim light filtering through the narrow shutters. These walls, though sturdy in appearance, offer no real protection against the biting cold or the insidious damp that fosters disease, their cracks and crevices harbouring mould that spreads like a silent plague. The earthen floor beneath your feet, strewn with clumps of straw that stick to your soles, is a breeding ground for fleas and lice, their tiny, relentless bites leaving red, inflamed welts on your skin that itch with a maddening intensity, a constant reminder of the vermin that thrive in this filthy environment. You scratch at your arm, wincing as the welts burn, and feel a growing sense of unease, your modern understanding of hygiene making the danger all too clear in a world where cleanliness is a distant dream. You notice the children, huddled near the hearth in a futile attempt to soak up its meagre warmth, coughing as they shiver in their threadbare tunics, their small bodies frail and trembling. Their faces are pale and pinched, their cheeks hollow from a diet of coarse bread and watery pottage, their eyes dull with the exhaustion of malnutrition and the constant assault of the smoky, mould-laden air. Their coughs are dry and persistent, echoing the wet, rattling cough of the elderly woman on her pallet, a sound that cuts through the room like a warning bell. Respiratory illnesses, from bronchitis to the dreaded tuberculosis, are a silent, relentless killer in this era, exacerbated by the smoke that fills the air, never fully escaping through the inadequate hole in the roof that serves as a makeshift chimney. The smoke lingers, settling on every surface, the blackened beams, the straw pallets, your own grimy clothing, coating everything in a fine layer of soot that clings to your skin and hair, making you feel as though you are suffocating in this cramped communal space. The elderly woman's condition, with its laboured breathing and feverish pallor, could easily spread in this close-knit household where privacy is non-existent and every cough releases invisible droplets into the shared air, carrying pathogens no one here can name or understand. You make a desperate mental note to stay as far from her as possible, but in this single-room home where humans and animals sleep, eat, and live in each other's constant presence, such distance is a fantasy. The air you breathe, thick with smoke, mould, and the stench of decay, feels like a poison, each inhale a gamble against unseen forces. The bowl of remedies on the shelf, a pitiful collection of dried herbs, a jar of rancid animal fat, and a vial of sour-smelling vinegar, is a stark reminder of how little this world can offer against the tide of disease. These crude concoctions, perhaps a tisane of yarrow for fever, a poultice of fat and herbs for wounds, or vinegar to cleanse the air, are the extent of the household's medical arsenal. As useless as they are hopeful. If the elderly woman's cough worsens, the family might call for a wise woman from the village, whose knowledge of herbs and charms is steeped in folklore and superstition, or a barber surgeon, whose unsterilized tools and brutal methods are as likely to kill as to cure. The thought is chilling. Barber surgeons, doubling as butchers and hairdressers, wield rusty blades to perform bloodletting, amputations or tooth extractions, their hands unwashed, their instruments caked with blood and grime. Wounds are packed with dung or spiderwebs, believed to draw out poison, but in reality, they introduce bacteria that turn minor injuries into festering deadly infections like sepsis or gangrene. The lack of sanitation is a death sentence in itself. Flies from the latrine pit, buzzing with filth, land on the food and bedding, spreading dysentery and typhoid. Hands are rarely washed. The same murky water used for cooking, cleaning wounds and washing dishes. And the well outside, perilously close to the latrine, seeps with contamination that no one here suspects. The people around you, moving through their morning routines with a stoic acceptance of illness as part of life, attribute sickness to miasmas, foul air rising from swamps or refuse, or to divine punishment for sins, real or imagined. Some whisper of witchcraft, their eyes darting suspiciously toward neighbours or strangers. Their fear of the supernatural as potent as their fear of disease. Your modern understanding of germs and contagion makes the danger all too real, a knowledge that weighs on you like the smoke that fills the room. The elderly woman's cough could be tuberculosis, pneumonia, or some other respiratory ailment, its true nature impossible to diagnose without microscopes or tests. The Black Death, though not yet arrived in its full apocalyptic horror, this is the early 14th century, just before its shadow falls, looms as a future spectre. But even now, measles, smallpox and dysentery sweep through villages, leaving death and suffering in their wake. A simple cut from a splinter or a rusty tool could lead to sepsis, a slow, agonizing death with no hope of treatment. The children's coughs, growing louder as they huddle near the hearth, are a haunting echo of the elderly woman's illness, a sign that the smoky, mould-laden air is already taking its toll on their fragile bodies. The wattle and daub walls, their surfaces slick with condensation, feed the mould that thrives in the damp corners, its spores a silent poison in every breath. The straw on the floor, crawling with vermin, harbours fleas that carry diseases like the plague, a threat no one here can foresee. You stand by the hearth, the faint warmth doing little to ease the chill in your bones or the fear in your heart, your eyes stinging from the smoke, your skin itching from flea bites. The air, heavy with the stench of mould, unwashed bodies and decay, feels like a physical weight, pressing down on you as you realize that survival in this medieval world is a gamble against forces no one understands. The elderly woman's cough echoes in your mind, a relentless, haunting reminder of the fragility of life in this era where every breath, every touch, every moment carries the weight of unseen dangers, and death is never far away. As the morning progresses in this cramped, smoky medieval home, you notice a small but striking ritual unfolding, one that underscores the strange, fear-laden world you've been thrust into. The woman, who seems to be the matriarch of this household, perhaps your sister or cousin in this disorienting 13th century reality, pauses by the hearth, her calloused fingers pinching a small amount of coarse salt from a tightly wrapped sack. With a deliberate, almost reverent motion, she sprinkles it into the fire, the flames hissing and crackling as the grains burn, sending up a faint, acrid smell that mingles with the ever-present smoke. Under her breath, she mutters a prayer, her words barely audible, but heavy with intent. A plea for protection against unseen forces. When you ask, her eyes flick to you, sharp and cautious, as if weighing your trustworthiness, before she explains in a low voice that the salt wards off evil spirits, those malevolent entities believed to lurk in the shadows, ready to bring misfortune to the unwary. Superstition permeates every aspect of life in this era, a constant undercurrent of fear that shapes every action and thought. Rain that drowns the crops, a drought that withers the fields, an illness that claims a child, a cow's milk drying up. These are not mere natural events, but signs of God's will, divine judgment, or the work of malevolent forces like witches or demons. You glance around the room, your eyes catching on a small wooden cross hanging above the low doorway, its symbol of divine protection in a world where danger feels ever present. Tucked into the corners of the room, hidden among the straw and shadows, are small charms, bits of bone, dried herbs or knotted cords, carefully placed to guard against the evil eye, that malevolent gaze believed to bring sickness or ruin. The air, thick with the smoke from the hearth and the musty scent of mould, feels heavy with these unseen threats, and you can't shake the sense that every action in this household is a defense against forces no one fully understands. The local priest, you learn, holds immense power in this community, his authority rooted in the church grip on every aspect of life. His blessings are sought for everything from sick livestock to nightmares that haunt the sleepless, his exorcisms called upon to banish demons from ailing bodies or cursed fields. The family speaks of him with a mix of awe and fear, his words carrying the weight of divine truth in a world where the line between the natural and supernatural is blurred. You overhear the children whispering in hushed, anxious tones about a neighbour, a woman accused of witchcraft after her strange behaviour, muttering to herself keeping a black cat was blamed for a recent crop failure that left the village hungry. The fear in their voices is palpable, their eyes darting toward the door as if expecting her to appear, her presence a threat to the fragile balance of their lives. You realise, with a chill that has little to do with the cold, how easily suspicion could turn to violence in this tight-knit but fearful community. A single accusation, a whispered rumour of witchcraft, could lead to a trial by ordeal, drowning, burning, or banishment, where innocence is nearly impossible to prove. The weight of this fear settles over you, as suffocating as the smoke that fills the room, and you feel a growing sense of unease, knowing that in this world you're a stranger. Your modern knowledge and habits a potential source of suspicion in a community quick to judge. Daily customs in this household are as alien to your modern sensibilities as the superstitions that govern them, each one a reminder of how far removed this world is from the comforts and hygiene of your time. The family eats from a single shared bowl, a chipped wooden vessel placed on a rough-hewn table, its surface scarred from years of use. They dip their hands into the pottage without hesitation, their fingers grubby from work in the muddy yard or tending livestock, plunging into the watery stew of oats, wilted cabbage and stringy onions. The sight makes you recoil, your modern understanding of germs screaming that this communal eating is a recipe for disease, yet no one here seems to notice or care. The pottage, already bland and gritty, is further tainted by the dirt and sweat on their hands. But the family eats with a quiet focus, their hunger outweighing any concern for cleanliness. You hesitate before joining them, your stomach churning at the thought of sharing the same bowl, but hunger and the need to blend in compel you to dip your own fingers into the mushy, lukewarm mixture. The texture is slimy, the flavour sour and unappealing, and you can't help but imagine the invisible pathogens, salmonella, dysentery, cholera, lurking in every bite. Cleanliness, you realise, is less important than ritual in this world, where survival often depends on adhering to tradition, no matter how unhygienic. When a rare bath is taken, perhaps for a wedding, a christening, or a religious festival like Easter, The process is as communal and unsanitary as the meals. The entire household shares a single wooden tub, its surface worn and splintered, filled with water laboriously hauled from the contaminated well and heated over the smoky hearth. The water, tepid at best, is used first by the head of the household, then passed down through the family in order of importance, ending with the youngest child. By the time the last person climbs in, the water is murky, a cloudy soup of dirt, sweat and skin flakes, offering little in the way of cleanliness. You try to imagine the scene. A family crowded around the tub, their bodies shivering in the cold air, their skin barely cleaner after the ordeal, and feel a wave of revulsion at the thought. Bathing is not a daily or even weekly ritual, but a rare event, undertaken only when tradition or necessity demands it. And even then, it's more about fulfilling a social or religious obligation than achieving hygiene. The children's diapers you notice with growing unease are little more than strips of coarse cloth, rarely changed and often damp, leaving infants in filthy conditions that breed rashes, infections, and discomfort. The youngest child, swaddled in such rags, is passed from one family member to another, their hands unwashed, their clothing stiff with grime, spreading dirt and disease with every touch. You try not to grimace as you watch. The sight of the infant's red, irritated skin peeking out from the soiled cloth, a stark reminder of the health risks that pervade this household. The lack of hygiene is so ingrained that no one seems to notice or care, their lives governed by routine and survival rather than cleanliness. The air in the house is heavy with the stench of unwashed bodies, mould and smoke. The walls damp with condensation that feeds the mould growing in every corner. The earthen floor, strewn with straw, is a haven for fleas and lice, their bites leaving red, inflamed welts on your skin that itch relentlessly, a constant distraction in an already uncomfortable existence. The family's clothing, coarse woolen tunics and linen shifts, patched and repatched until they're more holes than fabric, is rarely washed, the labour of laundering too arduous in a world without running water or soap as you know it. The communal living arrangement makes hygiene even harder. There's no privacy to wash or change, no separate rooms to escape the shared filth, only this single, smoky space where humans and animals coexist in a haze of dirt and disease. The well outside, perilously close to the latrine pit, provides water that's likely contaminated, used for drinking, cooking and washing without boiling, spreading diseases like typhoid and dysentery that the family attributes to supernatural causes. If you feel a growing sense of dread, your modern knowledge of germs and sanitation making the dangers all too clear, while the people around you move through their rituals with a stoic acceptance of hardship. The wooden cross above the door, the charms tucked into corners, the salt thrown into the fire, these are the family's defences against a world they believe is filled with malevolent forces, from demons to witches to the wrath of God. The children's whispered fears about the accused neighbour linger in your mind, a reminder of how quickly fear can turn to violence in this community, where a single misstep could brand you as an outsider, or worse. You stand by the hearth, the faint warmth doing little to ease the chill in your bones or the fear in your heart, the smoke stinging your eyes and the stench of mould and unwashed bodies filling your lungs. The rituals and customs, so strange and unsettling to your modern sensibilities, are a lifeline for this family, a way to impose order on a chaotic, dangerous world. Yet they offer no real protection against the true threats, disease, hunger, cold, that lurk in every breath, every touch, every moment. The infant's cries, the children's whispers, the woman's muttered prayers, they weave together into a haunting tapestry of fear and survival, a stark reminder of the fragility of life in this era where superstition reigns and danger is ever present. The house itself is a study in fragility, a precarious shell that seems to teeter on the edge of collapse, offering little protection against the relentless assaults of nature, time, and its own inherent flaws. The walls, constructed of wattle and daub, a lattice of woven sticks plastered with a crude mixture of mud, straw and animal dung, stand as a testament to the ingenuity and desperation of medieval life. But they are far from resilient. After heavy rain, which falls frequently in this damp English landscape, the walls soften and crack, their surfaces crumbling under the weight of water that seeps into the porous plaster. You run your fingers along the wall near the door, feeling the damp, gritty texture give slightly under your touch leaving a smear of mud on your skin that smells faintly of earth and decay. Tiny fissures spiderweb across the surface, some wide enough to let in slivers of cold air that whistle through the room, cutting through your threadbare clothing like a blade. The thatched roof above, a thick mat of straw and reeds, sags in places, its weight bowing the wooden beams beneath. During storms, it leaks relentlessly, dripping cold, murky water onto the earthen floor below, which turns to a slick, muddy quagmire underfoot. Each step you take squelches, the mud clinging to your bare feet, chilling your toes and embedding grit between them. The floor, packed hard but never truly clean, is a breeding ground for pests, fleas, lice and mice that scurry freely in the shadows, drawn by the warmth of the hearth and the crumbs of coarse bread scattered from the morning's meagre meal. You catch a glimpse of a mouse darting across the floor, its tiny claws scratching faintly, and feel a shiver of revulsion at the thought of sharing this space with such vermin. The wooden beams supporting the roof, though sturdy in appearance, are a silent threat, their surfaces blackened by years of smoke and glistening with dampness. They are vulnerable to fire, a danger that looms large in this home where the hearth is both a lifeline and a potential catastrophe. A single stray spark from the crackling flames could ignite the dry straw of the roof or the flammable wattle walls, setting the entire structure ablaze in moments. You notice scorch marks near the hearth, dark, jagged scars etched into the wood and floor, evidence of past near misses that send a chill down your spine. The memory of fire is ever present, a haunting reminder of how quickly this fragile home could become an inferno. There are no fire breaks, no extinguishers, no modern safeguards to contain a blaze, just a few wooden buckets filled with water from the contaminated well outside, utterly useless against a full-blown fire. The thought is terrifying, a family asleep, a spark catching the straw, the flames spreading with no escape from the single-room dwelling. You imagine the chaos, the screams, the choking smoke, and the realization that there's no one to call for help in a world without fire brigades or emergency services. The hearth, burning steadily now, is a double-edged sword, its warmth a necessity in the freezing winter air, but its danger a constant unspoken threat that hangs over the household like a spectre. The chickens wandering in and out of the house add to the chaos, their clucking a constant background noise as they peck at the earthen floor, searching for scraps of food, crumbs of barley bread, bits of wilted cabbage from the pottage, or even the occasional insect. Their feathers are bedraggled, caked with mud from the yard outside, and they leave droppings in their wake, small wet smears that blend into the filthy floor, adding to the stench of decay that permeates the air. You step carefully to avoid them, but it's impossible to escape the mess they create, their presence a reminder of how blurred the line is between indoors and outdoors in this world. The open door, left ajar to let in light and air, allows animals and pests to come and go freely, carrying fleas that crawl onto your clothing and skin, their bites leaving red, inflamed welts that itch relentlessly. You scratch at your ankle, feeling the sharp sting of a fresh bite, and realize with a sinking heart that these fleas could harbor plague bacteria, a threat that looms just beyond the horizon in this early 14th century world before the Black Death's full horror descends. Your modern knowledge of disease makes the danger all too real, while the family around you seems oblivious, accustomed to the vermin and filth as an inescapable part of life. The lack of proper ventilation turns the house into a health hazard, a claustrophobic prison where every breath feels like a risk. The smoke from the hearth, burning with damp wood that spits and hisses, lingers in the air, curling like a malevolent fog that stings your eyes until they water and coats your throat with a bitter, acrid residue that makes you cough reflexively. The hole in the roof, meant to serve as a chimney, is woefully inadequate, its narrow opening unable to draw out the thick haze that settles over the room, coating every surface, the blackened beams, the straw pallets, your own grimy tunic, in a fine layer of soot. The air is heavy, almost tangible, a toxic blend of smoke, mould, and the rancid odour of unwashed bodies, making every inhale a struggle against the urge to gag. The damp walls, slick with condensation, foster mould that you can smell even if you can't always see it, a musty, earthy scent that clings to your nostrils and seeps into your lungs. Black mould, toxic and insidious, thrives in these conditions, Its spores a silent poison that contributes to the respiratory ailments and mysterious agues that plague the household. You notice the children coughing as they huddle near the hearth, their small bodies shivering in their threadbare tunics, their faces pale and pinched from malnutrition and the constant assault of the smoky, mould-laden air. Their coughs echo the wet, rattling sound of the elderly woman on her pallet. A chilling reminder that respiratory illnesses, bronchitis, pneumonia, perhaps even tuberculosis, are a silent killer in this era, exacerbated by the smoke that never fully clears and the damp that never dries. The family moves through their morning routines with a stoic acceptance of these conditions, their lives shaped by a world where discomfort and danger are simply part of existence. The elderly woman's cough grows louder, her breathing laboured, her face a mask of exhaustion as she lies on her straw pallet, wrapped in a tattered blanket that offers little warmth. You make a mental note to stay as far from her as possible, but in this cramped communal space, where everyone shares the same air, the same floor, the same meagre resources, such distance is impossible. Your modern understanding of disease, germs, contagion, the role of sanitation, makes the hazards of this house all too clear, a stark contrast to the family's ignorance. They attribute illness to miasmas, bad air rising from swamps or refuse, or to divine punishment for sins, real or imagined. Some whisper of witchcraft, their eyes darting toward the door as if expecting a malevolent force to enter. The bowl of remedies on the shelf, dried herbs, rancid fat, a vial of vinegar, is a pitiful defense against the tide of disease, offering no real protection against the invisible pathogens that thrive in this environment. The open door, meant to let in light, also allows flies from the latrine pit to buzz inside, landing on the food and bedding, spreading dysentery and typhoid with every touch. The well outside, perilously close to the latrine, provides water that's likely contaminated, used for drinking, cooking and washing without boiling, a silent vector for illness that no one here suspects. You stand by the hearth, the faint warmth doing little to ease the chill in your bones or the fear in your heart. The smoke stings your eyes, blurring your vision, while the itch of flea bites is a constant, maddening distraction, each welt a reminder of the vermin that could carry the plague or other deadly diseases. The house is not just uncomfortable, it's a death trap, filled with hazards that its inhabitants are blissfully unaware of. The fragile walls crumbling under the weight of rain, the leaking roof, turning the floor to mud, the scorch marks, whispering of past fires, the mould, poisoning the air, the pests, carrying disease. It all weaves together into a tapestry of danger that surrounds you at every moment. The children's coughs grow louder, their frail bodies trembling in the cold, their faces a haunting reminder of how few may survive the winter. The elderly woman's laboured breathing, the chickens' droppings, the mice scurrying in the shadows, they all underscore the fragility of life in this era, where every breath, every step, every moment carries the weight of unseen dangers. You clutch your cloak tighter, its coarse fibres scratching your skin, and feel the weight of this medieval world pressing down on you, a relentless, suffocating reality where the very home meant to shelter you is a threat to your survival. As the day unfolds in this cramped, smoky medieval home, you become acutely aware of the stark division of labour that governs the household, a rigid structure that feels as suffocating as the thick air around you. The women, yourself included it seems, as you're drawn into the rhythm of their tasks, are expected to shoulder the endless gruelling responsibilities of domestic life, a relentless cycle of work that consumes every waking moment. Cooking, cleaning, sewing, tending the small muddy garden patch outside, and caring for the children fall squarely on the shoulders of the women, their roles defined by tradition and necessity in this 13th century world. The men, by contrast, rise early and leave for the fields, their boots heavy with mud as they head out to plough, sow or tend livestock, their labour valued above women's in a society that grants them authority and respect. You watch as the man of the house, perhaps a father or husband in this unfamiliar reality, grabs a worn cloak and strides out the low doorway, his departure marked by a grunt of acknowledgement, leaving the women to manage the chaos within. The hierarchy is clear, unspoken but absolute. Men's work is outdoors, physical and tied to the land, while women's work is confined to the home, invisible yet essential, a never-ending grind that offers no respite or recognition. You're handed a distaff and spindle, crude tools of wood and bone, and expected to spin wool into thread, a task that seems deceptively simple but proves to be both monotonous and maddeningly difficult. The distaff, a stick laden with a tangle of raw wool, is heavy in your hand, its fibres greasy with lanolin and flecked with bits of dirt and straw. The spindle, a weighted rod that dangles awkwardly, spins unevenly as you try to twist the wool into thread, your fingers fumbling with the unfamiliar motion. The wool slips and knots, the spindle drops to the muddy floor, and your clumsy attempts earn a sharp, disapproving glance from the older woman, her eyes narrowed with impatience. Her own hands move with practiced ease, spinning a smooth, even thread with a rhythm that speaks of years of repetition, her fingers calloused and stained from endless labour. You try again, your hands aching from the effort, the coarse wool scratching your skin, leaving it red and irritated. The task is mind-numbing, the hours stretching endlessly as you sit on a low stool near the hearth, the smoke stinging your eyes and the damp air chilling your bones. The realization dawns that this is just one of many tasks expected of you. Spinning, weaving, sewing, mending, all to produce the rough garments that clothe the family. Garments that are rarely washed and wear out quickly under the strain of daily toil. The weight of this labour, repetitive and unrelenting, feels like a chain, tethering you to a life of servitude in a world where women have no other role. Women in this era, you learn, are bound by more than just physical labour. They have no property rights, no access to education, no voice outside the confines of the home. Their lives are defined by marriage and motherhood, paths that offer no choice and little security. A woman's worth is measured by her ability to bear children, manage the household, and serve her husband. Yet these roles come with immense risk. Childbirth is a dangerous ordeal, a gauntlet of pain and peril that claims countless lives. Without sterile conditions, trained midwives, or medical interventions, infections like puerperal fever are rampant, turning a joyful event into a death sentence for both mother and child. Infant mortality is staggeringly high, with many newborns succumbing to infections, malnutrition, or congenital issues within days or weeks. The women in this household speak of childbirth with a mix of resignation and fear, their stories filled with losses. Sisters, cousins, neighbours who bled out or burned with fever after delivery. The older woman, her face lined with the weight of years, mentions a daughter lost to childbirth last spring, her voice flat but her eyes betraying a flicker of grief. You shudder at the thought, your modern knowledge of medicine making the danger all too vivid, while the women around you accept it as an inevitable part of life, their faith in God and the Church their only solace. Children fare little better in this harsh world, their lives devoid of the carefree play or structured education you associate with childhood. The concept of childhood as a protected time of learning and growth is non-existent here. Children are small labourers, expected to contribute to the household's survival from the moment they can walk. The older boy, barely 10, is already out the door, his small frame wrapped in a patched cloak as he's sent to tend the family's few sheep in the muddy fields beyond the village. His face, pale and pinched from hunger, carries a weight far beyond his years, his eyes focused and serious as he grips a crooked staff, ready to face the cold and the wolves that might lurk in the nearby woods. The girl, perhaps 8, is tasked with gathering firewood, her thin arms struggling under the weight of damp branches she drags in from the yard. She also hauls water from the well, her small hands gripping a heavy wooden bucket that sloshes murky liquid onto her tattered dress, her breath visible in the frigid air. These tasks are not optional, but essential. Each child's labour, a thread in the fragile web that keeps the household afloat. You watch them work, their movements mechanical, their faces set in expressions of quiet endurance, and feel a pang of heartache at the loss of their youth, stolen by a world that demands their strength before their bodies are ready. The youngest child, still in swaddling, lies in a corner on a pile of straw, her cries a piercing wail that cuts through the smoky air, but goes largely ignored as the women focus on their tasks, spinning, stirring the pottage, mending torn garments. The swaddling, little more than strips of coarse cloth, is damp and filthy, rarely changed, leaving the infant in conditions that breed rashes and infections. The cloth, stained with urine and worse, clings to her delicate skin, and you wince at the sight of red, irritated patches peeking out from the folds. The infant is passed from one family member to another, her cries growing louder as she's jostled in arms already busy with other tasks, her small body wrapped in layers that offer little warmth or cleanliness. You learn, through hushed conversations, that many children don't survive infancy, succumbing to diseases like diarrhea, pneumonia, or smallpox, or to accidents, falling into the hearth, suffocating in their swaddling, or simply wasting away from malnutrition. The family's stoic acceptance of this reality is heartbreaking, their grief muted by the relentless demands of survival. The older woman mentions almost casually that this is her third child to reach this age, the others lost to fevers or weakness that no one could name or treat. Her voice is steady, but her hands tremble slightly as she spins her wool, a fleeting sign of the pain buried beneath her resilience. The air in the house is heavy with smoke from the hearth, stinging your eyes and coating your throat, mingling with the musty scent of mould and the rancid odour of unwashed bodies. The wattle and daub walls, damp and crumbling, foster mould that you can smell even if you can't see it. Its spores a silent threat in every breath. The earthen floor, strewn with straw, is a breeding ground for fleas and lice, their bites leaving red welts on your skin that itch relentlessly. The lack of ventilation exacerbates the health hazards, the smoke lingering in a thick haze that irritates lungs and eyes, contributing to the coughs that echo through the household. The children's pale faces and the elderly woman's laboured breathing are constant reminders of the respiratory ailments, bronchitis, tuberculosis, that thrive in this environment. The division of labour, with women confined to the home and children pressed into work, feels like a trap, a cycle of toil and danger with no escape. You sit with the distaff, your fingers aching, the wool slipping through your clumsy grasp, and feel the weight of this medieval world pressing down on you. The women's lack of rights, the children's stolen childhoods, the ever-present threat of death from childbirth or disease. It's a relentless, suffocating reality, and you dread the day ahead, each task a reminder of the fragility and hardship of life in this era. As the morning wears on in this smoky, frigid medieval home, the tasks pile up with a relentless intensity that feels like a weight pressing down on your shoulders, each one a reminder of the unending labour that defines life in this 13th century world. You're expected to help prepare the next meal, a grueling process that begins with hauling water from the contaminated well outside, the wooden bucket heavy in your hands, its splintered handle digging into your palms. The well, perilously close to the latrine pit, yields water that's cloudy with sediment, its surface flecked with bits of debris that hint at its impurity. You trudge back through the muddy yard, the cold seeping through your thin shoes, the bucket sloshing and soaking the hem of your coarse tunic. Inside, you stir the pottage over the smoky fire, the heat barely penetrating the damp chill of the room, the wooden spoon rough against your fingers as you mix the watery stew of oats, wilted cabbage and stringy onions. The smoke stings your eyes, blurring your vision, and the acrid smell of burning wood mingles with the sour tang of the pottage, making your stomach churn. Kneading dough for another loaf of coarse bread is no less taxing. The barley and rye flour, gritty with chaff, sticks to your hands, forming a heavy, unyielding mass that resists your efforts. Your arms ache as you press and fold, the dough cold and stubborn, the task made harder by the lack of a proper table or tools, just a rough board balanced on a stool. The garden, a muddy patch of cabbage and leeks struggling to survive in the infertile soil, demands attention next. You kneel in the cold, wet earth, your fingers numb as you pull weeds that cling tenaciously to the ground, their roots tangled and unyielding. The soil is heavy, clumping under your nails, its chill seeping into your bones, leaving your hands red and raw. Sewing and mending are constant, as the family's few garments, threadbare tunics, patched cloaks and tattered shifts, are worn to tatters, each tear a challenge to patch, with a limited supply of coarse thread and a bone needle that's dull from use. You struggle to stitch a gaping hole in a child's tunic, your fingers fumbling with the unfamiliar task, the fabric stiff with grime and smelling of mildew. Each prick of the needle feels like a small defeat. The older woman's sharp glance a reminder of your inadequacy in this world where skill is born of necessity and repetition. The labor is relentless, a cycle of tasks that blend into one another, leaving no room for rest or reflection, your body and mind worn down by the sheer physicality of survival. The children's labor continues unabated, their small bodies pressed into service with a grim efficiency that belies their youth. The boy, barely 10, returns briefly from the fields, his hands red and chapped from the cold, his face set in a mask of quiet endurance as he reports on the family's few sheep. His patched cloak is damp from the drizzle outside, and he lingers only long enough to grab a crust of bread before heading back out, his small frame disappearing into the mist, tasked with guarding the flock against wolves or thieves. The girl, perhaps 8, trudges in with an armful of firewood, her thin arms trembling under the weight, her dress soaked and clinging to her frail body. She drops the branches near the hearth, her breath visible in the frigid air, and immediately sets out to haul more water, her small hands gripping the heavy bucket with a determination that breaks your heart. There's no concept of childhood as a time of play or learning here. These children are labourers, their contributions essential to the household's survival, their youth sacrificed to the demands of a world that offers no mercy. The youngest child, still in swaddling, lies in a corner on a pile of straw, her cries growing weaker as the morning progresses, her needs secondary to the household's endless tasks. The swaddling, damp and filthy, clings to her delicate skin, and you wince at the sight of red irritated patches, a breeding ground for rashes and infections in a world without clean cloth or soap. She's passed from one busy family member to another, her wails ignored as the women focus on spinning wool, stirring the pottage or mending garments, their hands too full to offer comfort. You learn through hushed fragments of conversation that many infants don't survive their first year, succumbing to disease, malnutrition or accidents, falling into the hearth, suffocating in their swaddling, or simply wasting away from a lack of nourishment. The family's stoic acceptance of this reality is heartbreaking, their grief buried beneath the weight of survival, a constant reminder of how precarious life is in this era. You feel a growing sense of exhaustion, your body aching from the unaccustomed labor, your mind reeling from the emotional toll of witnessing this family's struggle. The lack of agency for women, confined to the home with no rights or voice, is a suffocating reality. Their lives defined by marriage, motherhood, and endless toil. The exploitation of children, pressed into labor from an early age, strips them of any semblance of childhood. Their frail bodies worn down by tasks meant for adults. The constant spectre of death, through disease, childbirth, or accident, looms over the household, a silent threat that no one fully understands. The air is thick with smoke, the walls damp with mould, the floor crawling with vermin, each a reminder of the health hazards that pervade this world. You sit by the hearth, your fingers sore from spinning, your eyes stinging from smoke, and wonder how anyone endures the relentless hardship of this medieval life, where every task, every moment, is a battle against forces that seem determined to break you. By late afternoon, your body is a map of aches, each muscle protesting the unfamiliar toil of medieval labor, the endless hauling of firewood through the mud, the rhythmic strain of churning butter until your arms burned, the relentless chill that gnaws at your bones despite the heavy, coarse wool draped over your shoulders. The world around you feels raw, unyielding, as if it conspires to test your endurance at every turn. The family gathers once more around the rough-hewn table, its surface scarred from years of use, for another meagre meal, a thin pottage of barley, wilted herbs, and tough root vegetables, a crust of dense rye bread that crumbles like earth in your hands, and, as a rare and precious treat, a small wedge of hard cheese, its sharp, tangy bite a fleeting moment of indulgence. In a life defined by scarcity, you eat in silence, the weight of the day settling over you like the low, smoke-stained beams of the cramped house. Each spoonful of pottage, each tear of bread, is a quiet testament to survival, a daily victory wrested from the jaws of hardship. These people, bound to the unceasing rhythms of nature and the distant tolling of the church bell, know nothing of bacteria, nutrition, or the safety standards that underpin your modern existence. Yet they persist, driven by instinct, faith, and a stubborn resilience that feels both humbling and heroic in its simplicity. As dusk creeps over the horizon, the house sinks into deepening shadow, the single tallow candle on the table casting a frail, flickering glow that barely holds the darkness at bay. The air is thick with the acrid scent of smoke and the musty damp of earth-packed walls. You sit on the edge of your straw pallet, its uneven lumps pressing into your thighs, and pull the coarse, threadbare blanket closer, its rough weave offering little comfort against the encroaching cold. In this dim, quiet moment, your mind wanders to the modern world you've left behind, and the contrast strikes you with almost physical force. You think of the clean water that flows effortlessly from a tap, the electric lights that banish night with a flick of a switch, the refrigerator humming with safe, abundant food, fresh fruits, meats and dairy, preserved without fear of spoilage. You picture the medicine cabinet in your bathroom, stocked with bandages, antiseptics, and drugs refined through centuries of science, each one a bulwark against the invisible threats that once claimed lives with merciless regularity. These are not mere conveniences, but miracles, built on a foundation of safety and certainty that this medieval world could never imagine. Smoke alarms that stand sentinel in your home, building codes that ensure walls don't crumble, vaccinations that shield you from diseases like smallpox or plague. These are the fruits of progress, each one paid for with the lives lost to the very dangers you've encountered today. Tainted water, unchecked fires, the ever-present spectre of illness lurking in the shadows. You reflect on the fragility of this medieval existence, where every task carries risk, where a single misstep, a cut left untreated, a spark landing on dry straw could unravel a family's precarious hold on life. The people around you move through their routines with a quiet stoicism, their faces etched with the lines of labour and loss, yet they carry on, tethered to the land and to each other. Their world is governed by forces they cannot fully comprehend, seasons that dictate abundance or famine, a church that offers solace but demands obedience, a natural world that is both provider and predator. You marvel at their endurance, at the sheer tenacity it takes to rise each morning and face a life so unrelentingly harsh. In your time, survival is a given, a baseline assumption. Here, it is a daily act of defiance, a refusal to be broken by a world that offers no guarantees. Lying back on the creaking pallet, you pull the scratchy blanket tighter, its thin fibres doing little to fend off the chill that seeps from the stone floor. The fire in the hearth has dwindled to a scattering of glowing embers, their faint warmth swallowed by the cold that presses in from every side. The room grows quieter, filled only with the soft, rhythmic breathing of the family, their forms huddled together under shared blankets, and the distant, mournful howl of a dog outside, a sound that carries the weight of the wild, untamed world beyond these fragile, wattle and daub walls. In this moment, you feel a profound mix of awe and gratitude, a reverence for the strength of those who live in this unforgiving time, and a deep, aching appreciation for the life you'll return to. The medieval world, so often romanticized in stories, films, and paintings, reveals itself as a crucible of endurance, where every day is a battle against filth, danger, and the ever-present threat of loss. One day here has stripped away any illusions, laying bare the brutal reality of a life without the safety nets of modernity, clean water, reliable heat, medical care, or the simple assurance that tomorrow will come. Yet there is something almost sacred in the resilience of these people, in the way they carve out meaning from the relentless grind of survival. Their lives are woven into the fabric of the seasons, the church, the land itself, each thread a testament to their unyielding will to endure. As you lie there, the crackle of the dying fire and the soft cadence of the family's breathing become a kind of lullaby, grounding you in this fleeting journey through a world so distant from your own. You think of the countless lives that form the bridge between this moment and your modern existence. Generations of trial and error, of suffering and discovery, each one building the foundations of the safety and comfort you've always known. The diseases that once ravaged villages are now held at bay by vaccines. The fires that consumed homes are now tamed by regulations and technology. The hunger that gnawed at bellies is now answered by abundance born of innovation. Every step forward was a victory, hard won through centuries of sacrifice, each advancement a monument to the human spirit's refusal to surrender. As you drift towards sleep, the cold of the medieval night presses closer, its icy fingers seeping through the thin, scratchy blanket and the crevices of the wattle and daub walls, chilling the air around your straw pallet. Yet this biting cold cannot pierce the warmth of your newfound realization. Modern life, for all its complexities, distractions, and stresses, is an extraordinary gift, an intricate tapestry woven from the countless threads of human struggle, ingenuity, and unyielding hope. Each thread represents a life, a discovery, a sacrifice that pave the way for the world you've temporarily left behind. The distant howl of a dog, mournful and wild, fades into the vast, unyielding darkness outside, a sound that carries the untamed pulse of this medieval world. You close your eyes, your heart heavy with a quiet, solemn vow. You will never again take for granted the light that floods your home at the touch of a switch, banishing the night with effortless brilliance. The water that runs clean and clear from a tap, free of the taint that lurks in every bucket here. The medicines that stand ready in your cabinet, refined through centuries to heal wounds and fend off diseases that once claimed entire villages. Above all, you will cherish the simple, profound certainty that your modern world is built to keep you safe, a certainty as alien to this time as the stars are to the smoke-filled room around you. This temporary exile into the medieval world has reshaped you, carving into your soul a gratitude as enduring as the weathered stone beneath these fragile walls. The day's labours, hauling firewood through the biting wind, churning butter until your shoulders ached, scrubbing pots with ash and freezing water, have stripped away the romantic veneer of this era, revealing a life of relentless hardship, where survival is a daily act of defiance against a world that offers no mercy. You think of the family sleeping nearby, their faces lined with the wear of years spent battling hunger, cold, and the ever-present threat of illness. They know nothing of germ theory, nutritional science, or the safety standards that underpin your modern existence. Yet they endure, driven by instinct, faith, and a stubborn will to see another dawn. Their resilience is a quiet miracle, a testament to the human spirit's capacity to thrive in the face of unyielding adversity. The fire in the hearth has dwindled to a faint scatter of embers, their soft glow barely holding back the encroaching darkness. The room is filled with the rhythmic breathing of the family, huddled together under shared blankets, their warmth a fragile bulwark against the cold. Outside, the dog's howl rises again, a lonely cry that weaves itself into the tapestry of the night, reminding you of the wild, untamed world beyond these walls, a world where danger lurks in every shadow, where nature is both provider and predator. You lie back on the creaking pallet, the straw shifting beneath you, and your mind drifts to the countless lives that form the bridge between this moment and your own time. Each generation, each hard-won discovery built the foundations of the safety and comfort you've always known. The vaccines that protect you from plagues that once swept through villages like a scythe. The building codes that ensure your home stands firm against storms. The agricultural innovations that fill your refrigerator with food, free from the spectre of famine. These are the legacies of centuries of trial and error, paid for with the lives of those who face the very dangers you've encountered today. You think of the smoke alarms that stand sentinel in your modern home, the fire extinguishers tucked in corners, the hospitals with their sterile halls and life-saving machines. These are not mere conveniences but triumphs, each one a monument to humanity's refusal to be broken by the fragility of existence. In this medieval world, a single spark could consume a home, a cut could fester into a death sentence. A bad harvest could starve a family, yet the people around you carry on, their lives woven into the unceasing rhythms of the seasons, the church, and the land itself. There is something almost sacred in their endurance, a quiet dignity in the way they face each day with no promise of tomorrow. You feel a pang of awe for their strength, and an even deeper gratitude for the progress that has spared you their burdens. The cold presses closer, but your thoughts burn bright, illuminating the vast distance between this world and yours. The medieval night is a living thing, heavy with the weight of uncertainty, but it cannot dim the clarity of your reflection. Modern life, with all its flaws, its noise, its rush, its endless demands, is a marvel, a delicate balance of systems and innovations designed to protect, to heal, to sustain. You think of the scientists, the engineers, the reformers who fought to build that world, their names often lost to history, their contributions woven into the fabric of your daily life. Every flick of a light switch, every sip of clean water, every pill swallowed to ease a fever is a testament to their legacy, A legacy you've never fully appreciated until now, lying here in the dark, surrounded by the raw, unfiltered reality of a time before such miracles existed. As sleep begins to pull you under, the last sounds you hear, the fading crackle of embers, the soft, steady breathing of the family, the distant, haunting howl of the dog, linger like a hymn to resilience, a melody that binds this fragile moment to the strength of those who came before you and those who will come after. This day in the medieval world has been a crucible, forging in you a gratitude so deep it feels like a physical weight, anchoring you to the present even as it points you toward the future. You vow to carry this lesson with you, to honor the sacrifices that built the safety of your world by living with intention, with appreciation, with a heart open to the miracles disguised as the ordinary. The darkness of the medieval night envelops you, but it cannot touch the light of your resolve. As you surrender to sleep, the final echoes of the dog's cry fade into the vast, untamed silence, a reminder of the fragility of this world and the enduring strength it took to build the one you'll return to, a world of light, warmth and hope, hard-won and infinitely precious.